Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd. Our Lord, the Mighty, the Majestic, He has mentioned, Kullu nafsin dha'iqatul maut. Every soul will taste death. And the reality, the fact, is that the only thing that is permanent about this life experience that we have is impermanence. And the Messenger of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he has mentioned, إن الله لا يقبل العلم انتزاعا ينتزعه من العباد ولكن يقبل العلم بقبض العلماء. Allah will not take the knowledge away by snatching it away from the servants, but rather He will take the knowledge away by taking the scholars away, meaning the death of the scholars. And news may have reached many of us at this point in time that our Sheikh and our teacher, Sheikh Ubayd ibn Abdullah ibn Sulaiman al-Jaabiree, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, that he has now passed away. And news of this reached us this past Monday, and I believe that was the day that he had passed, rahimahullah. And we just thought it appropriate just to share something of our experience with the Sheikh. May Allah bestow mercy upon his soul. My first experience with the Sheikh was in the late 90s. I believe it was in the year 1998, and Allah knows best. And there was a cassette tape that was circulating at that time, advice to the Salafis in the West. And at the time that this particular cassette recording, this audio recording was circulating, it was a means of clarity and direction at that time. And it was a starting point for many of us at that time. And a couple years after that, I was blessed to be accepted into the Islamic University of Medina on scholarship as a student there. And of all the scholars that had impact upon me during my time in Medina, I would have to say that the three scholars that impacted me personally the most were Sheikh Ali Nasr al-Faqihi, may Allah preserve him, and Sheikh Ubayd al-Jaabiree, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, and Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari, may Allah preserve him. And being in Medina at that time, some of the students who were there and they were in the lessons of the Sheikh, they took me to a small masjid and a rocky type of area where he was staying at that time. And we would go there and attend some of his lessons. And this was kind of my first introduction to the Sheikh and physically seeing him. And throughout the time that I was there, I would say in the time that I was studying, particularly with the Sheikh, every year that I was there, I began to become more involved with the Sheikh. And at its height, I was sitting with the Sheikh 5 days in a week. He would hold 3 lessons in a week at his peak anyway, during my particular stay. He would hold lessons 3 days in a week. And on Thursdays, he would have open house after Asr, between Asr and Maghrib. And then on Fridays, he would conduct the Jumu'ah sermon, and we would go there as much as we could to be there. And I was very consistent with the Sheikh at that time, and there were numerous works that the Sheikh had taught that I had the opportunity to experience. For example, al-Wajibat, al-Mutahattimat, a work that deals with Tawheed al-Ibadah, as well as the work Kitab al-Tawheed, the book of monotheism. Also, I recall the Sheikh teaching Umdatul Ahkam, a work in Hadith law. I also recall the Sheikh teaching Umdatul Fiqh, a beginner Hanbali text. And there were many other works that the Sheikh would teach at that time, and that we had the opportunity to benefit from the Sheikh. And the Sheikh, he was one who, he was very well spoken. He was charismatic. And of course, as many of us know, the Sheikh, he was blind. But in his blindness, he had sight. And to the extent that I recall at the peak of my sitting with the Sheikh, he had moved into a much larger home and was holding lessons primarily in his home at that time, that particular year. And the Sheikh would come down through the house by himself, and there was a living room style area where he would hold the lessons, and he would come sit, and he wouldn't hesitate. We would kind of know exactly where he was going. And on one occasion, the Sheikh actually himself brought down tea, and he had the tray, and he had the tea and the cups there, and he carried it down and placed it down and for us, and he was just able to do that. I also recall when the Sheikh was in his older home, his home before that home, and I remember going to see the Sheikh, and I recall going for prayer at the masjid that was near his older home. And I'm saying older, newer relatives at the time that I was there, of course. And I remember seeing the Sheikh touching onto the walls of the houses and the buildings and finding his way to the masjid by himself. And that was something that was just very encouraging to see, and very humbling to see at that time. That here it is, this man who is blind is making his own way to the masjid by himself, just to establish the prayer and pray. I mean, how much more ourselves when we have our faculties operating. And the Sheikh, he was generally speaking someone that was kind. He was a person that had good diction. He was a person that had proficiency in aqidah, in theology, in fiqh, in usul al-fiqh, in law and in legal theory. And also, as the Sheikh graduated with his bachelor's in Sharia, in law, he did his master's study in tafsir, in exegesis, and he had a good hand in the field of tafsir as well, in the field of exegesis as well. And the Sheikh, he would be patient with us as non-Arabs, as people who were learning the language. He wouldn't make us feel any type of way because we were not Arabs, or because we were learning the language, or because we were newer to areas of knowledge and da'wah at that time, of knowledge and invitation and preaching at that time. And he would be patient with us, and he would take us, he would receive us, he would place importance upon our affairs. We would have links with him at times, and he would speak to us in our affairs in the West, and we would be speaking to him. And if you stumbled over a word, or if you were trying to figure something out, he would be patient and try to help you out, and he would remember you. He would remember you by hearing your voice. And at times, he would remember you not even by hearing your voice, by just hearing your person. And I'll give you an example. One time, the Sheikh was teaching and teaching in the masjid, and we were there in the lesson. And one of our brothers, Sheikh Abdul Hakim Bilal Davis, may Allah preserve him, came to the lesson, but he happened to come to the lesson a little bit after it started. And the Sheikh was in the lesson, and at this time, in these lessons, he would teach a few different books inside of one sitting, for those that recall that particular time. And he would pose questions to us. And on this occasion, he said, "Alaysa kadhalik ya Abdul Hakim?" Isn't that the case, Abdul Hakim? And it's like, how would he even know that he was there, right? When he came in late, and he sat kind of in the back because he came in late. He didn't want to disturb. And the Sheikh was one that was very conscious of his time, and he had this watch. And the watch that he had, we would see him flip up the top of the watch, and he was feeling inside, always checking for the time. And this is something that had impact upon me, and just being conscious of time, and when you're speaking, and when you're conducting a lesson, and things of this nature. And during his sittings that we would have on Thursdays, he would have an open house every Thursday, as we stated, from Asr until Maghrib. and it would just be open. He would take questions from the people. He would receive them. There will be guests that would come in from different places, and at times, Sheikh Abdullah Bukhari, Hafidahullah, may Allah preserve him, would stop by. In fact, there were certain scholars that the only opportunity that I had to meet and interact with them was in this particular setting when they were visiting Sheikh Ubayd from traveling out of town. For example, Sheikh Ali Zubair, rahimahullah, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul. My meeting the Sheikh was inside of the house of Sheikh Ubayd al-Jaabiree and interacted with him there, for example. And the Sheikh was one that he had concern for the masses, and he had passion for the faith and for the guidance of the people. And for his Friday sermons, he would do something, and he would teach us by way of what he was doing. And he, for some time, would give the khutbah from Kitab al-Tawheed, from the book of Tawheed, the book of monotheism. And he would simply take a topic, or take a chapter rather, from the book of Tawheed, and would convey it and explain it to the people. And he would do it in such a way that would relate to the people and what the people were going through at that time. And this is something that I witnessed the Sheikh do for over a year's time straight. It was an amazing feat. And the Sheikh was well known to the students of Medina and to the mashayikh, to the scholars of Medina. And he had great impact upon the lives of many. Definitely had impact upon my life and my development at that time in my early 20s, attempting to get grounding in seeking knowledge and things of that nature. Also reading the works of the Sheikh, reading his works in Aqidah, reading his works in theology. Also, even in Usul al-Fiqh, the Sheikh would teach al-Waraqat of al-Juwayni, benefiting from that as well in legal theory. And he has an excellent work as well in about 4 volumes where he is explaining tafsir. And he's doing so by way of Sahih al-Bukhari and explaining the book of Tafsir and Sahih al-Bukhari, and just benefiting from the life of the Sheikh, and also learning from him a lot about da'wah, a lot about apologetics, invitation, preaching, how to interact with the people, particularly how to interact with people who do not share the same belief as yourself, how to interact with people who do not share the same methodology as yourself, and how to interact with people that may be opposing you in your efforts. The Sheikh was very, very profound in these particular areas. And there's one example that does come to mind that we'll share with you. And the Sheikh would mention that if you are going to a people that you know are in opposition to your methodology, yet they have invited you to be there out of respect and want to benefit from you and the knowledge that you possess, the first thing that you do not do is to speak ill about their teachers and speak ill about their journey in their faith practice. But rather, what you do is you convey to them and teach them, this is Tawheed and this is Shirk. This is monotheism and this is polytheism. This is Sunnah, this is Bid'ah. This is what the Sunnah is. This is prophetic tradition, and this is innovation. And you give them the truth, and you give them principles, and you give them orthodoxy and orthopraxy, and you build their foundation. And then eventually, they will come into a space on their own where they may very well realize that, well, what you've been conveying to us and what you've been establishing, what is clearly evidence-based and what clearly appears to be true, is different than what we were being taught. So can you tell us about this issue? Can you tell us about that person? Or can you give us a proper understanding of this particular matter? And then that is your opportunity to explain to that particular person or persons what may be happening or different affairs that need to be set right. And he also told us to be patient with the general populace of the people, with the lay populace of the Muslims. And even if there is something that is true, or something that is sunnah, something that is prophetic tradition, or something that is right and exact, but it is something that is unknown to your audience, that you shouldn't just surprise the people and do something that they are completely unaware of. And you know that if you do it, they will understand it to be opposition to the truth and opposition to Sunnah due to their ignorance of what truth and Sunnah is. But rather, what you should do is you should find time and opportunity to educate the people on those matters first. And then once they have been educated on it, then you take the time and the opportunity to do that thing that they were once unaware of. And by way of this, you won't find opposition from them, but you will find them receiving your da'wah, receiving your teaching and your message. So these are just some things that have come to us and that we have in mind concerning the Sheikh and his life, and at least our experience with the Sheikh. And really, I don't know what exactly to say. I just feel as though because he is our Sheikh and our teacher, that we should be saying something and sharing something. And I state this just as an encouragement to myself and to others that have had experiences with scholars, with mashayikh, to begin sharing those experiences so that we can document our history and so that we can take a lesson from your experiences and from your experiences with your scholars and with your teachers. As Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah would mention in the Dhikr Salihin, tatanazal al-Rahmah, that when the righteous are mentioned, mercy from Allah descends. And this week has been an interesting week and a trying week for. We opened the week with the death of Sheikh Ubayd al-Jaabiree, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, and news has also reached us of the death of Sheikh Mahmoud al-Tahan, may Allah bestow mercy upon his soul, as just about every talib ilm, just about every disciple of knowledge has his book in their library, Taysir al-Mustalah al-Hadith, facilitating or making easy the nomenclature of hadith, the terminology of prophetic tradition, and this work is taught at the university level. And many of us, we have had exposure to this particular field through this particular work, and also it is recessed that Sheikh Abdurrahman Muhyiddin rahimahullah also passed in this week. So let us continue to benefit from those of scholarship that are living and that are present with us in the East as well as in the West. And please document and share your experiences as well so that the masses can benefit from that. May Allah bless all of you. هذا والله أعلم وصلى الله على محمد والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.